1 second, I needed to start the recording here.
Oh,
So.
yeah.
So
I guess
Sarah, I think what would be good is if you can share what your plans are as far as rolling out the Fidium fiber in Mount Desert.
And then how it relates maybe to the whole island as well.
Yeah, so I mean, currently we do not have specific plans to roll out Fidium in Mount Desert. It's not in our 2023 capital plan. It may enter in the future, but isn't there currently. We do have a commitment and will be rolling out fiber in 2024 in the Bar Harbor area, but that is yet to be determined exactly where that's going to be and how extensive that rollout is going to be. We typically complete our planning and pull our specifics with respect to our deployment of fiber in the September timeframe.
Could you repeat that? You make plans in September for the future years, or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we start sort of mid-year deciding our short list of where we're looking at for the next year. That gets refined largely through the September timeframe. On a more like we say on an FDH level, that's a smaller unit. That's a splitter of where we serve fiber out of, if you will. So we decide sort of in exactly which areas of town based on some high level vetting, exactly where we intend to roll out in those areas. So with respect to Bar Harbor, we know we're going to do a significant amount of that area, but we have to gather more information with respect to, you know, homes and how much underground and how much of the underground has conduit available, those kind of costing type decisions, and then make some decisions on, you know, how far our capital plan will bring us to build out that area.
And you are developing other areas of Maine currently, right?
Yes, yep. We have each year, I mean, you know, like it's a fight for capital. Each year we have so much capital to spend and
Right.
a lot of areas that are looking for fiber, and we try to do as much as we can get done. We do it two ways largely. We do some sort of more urban areas on our own capital. So significant amount of build happens that way. Those are your Portlands, your Westbrooks, Falmouths. And then we do a fair amount with partnerships in the form of either state grants or other sort of consolidated town partnerships. Those tend to have a lower return on the front end because they're more rural, but a higher return on the back end because with partnerships, we find we get a lot more on the take rate side of things.
So that would be probably what you'd be doing in Bar Harbor and other towns in this area if and when that happens.
Yes, yep.
All right. I was just curious because in Southwest, I keep getting emails from Fidium saying, we're almost ready to roll out your network, you know, share it with friends.
Share it with your friends.
And that's probably like, okay, well, maybe that's when I'm turning 73 years.
Well, we hope not, but yeah, and we do look at where we have a fair amount of pre-subscription,
Right.
where there's a lot of interest, you know. I mean, take rate is real, and it matters, and it's not easy everywhere, so.
Right. So is there any groundwork that a town could do to sway you to focus on a particular area if you had a lot of people say they would want it or not?
A couple of things, yeah. So to the extent there's any amount of, we call it a pre-order, essentially it's your name and email address and your physical address and interest. Any sort of amount of that means, you know, for us, it's enough that someone took the time to do that. That must mean they care enough about fiber to look around. So we take that as a really good indicator. You know, even more formal commitments obviously mean more it tends to
Right.
be hard to, when you say an area, it tends to be hard to look at just a neighborhood.
Right,
Because you're obviously putting in a fair amount of central office equipment and core equipment that you kind of need to spread against a subscriber base that's a little bigger than a neighborhood in the way that we deploy. But if you have a fair amount in the town, that's always helpful.
right.
Sarah, on those pre-orders, is that pre-orders by individuals to indicate what the take rate would be? Or is that
Yes.
pre-orders by the town to say, we want you to come here?
That would be by individuals. So that's just like going on our website, super simple, putting in your name, physical address, email address, just saying, I'm interested. I would love to have fiber. We see that. Towns could also, to the extent they have people, they could deliver a bulk, like here are a list of, I mean, there's no formal agreement on our website any more than anything else. So with some assertion that there was a fair amount of take, we would consider that, absolutely.
And is Consolidated's long-range plan to try to do fiber for most, if not all of Maine, or?
In theory,
Right.
Everything is capital constrained.
Correct, yeah.
So obviously we want to get to 400,000 locations was our original goal when we received a significant investment to do so with state and federal money, assuming some of that flows. We think we can exceed that by a fair amount, but we have yet to see how much of that will flow and then what directions it will flow. So
Is it fair to say that your emphasis would be in areas that there isn't a lot of other competition? Like, for example, if Spectrum had a heavy presence in an area, would that figure into your long range planning?
yeah, so it matters to some extent. We do fairly well against the cable company. If there's another fiber competitor, sometimes that will convince us not to go there. We're not afraid of going against the cable company. We get better take rates where there isn't a cable competitor, obviously, so that matters, but 70% of not that many people is still significantly lower than 20% of a fair amount of people, so it's all those numbers matter. It's like how rural.
I mean, you're in a pretty favorable position because of your ease of attachment to poles and already having a lot of lines run everywhere already.
Yeah, no, we can deploy faster and cheaper than most of our competitors, and so that gives us a fair advantage, that's for sure.
Do you have fiber optic now to Ellsworth?
So we have the core built out to Ellsworth. We are beginning construction in the Ellsworth area in the first quarter of 23, so in a few weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that decision was largely enabled by we have core, frankly, to Southwest Harbor and Bar Harbor. We built that ring all as a single element. So core costs are already all done. That's sort of the fiber that connects our offices together, that allows our uplinks to the internet, allows plenty of capacity in the back end. That is all built out in the area. That was largely spurred by our partnership with the Blue Hill Peninsula. And their federal grant. So that was really great. And that made Ellsworth really attractive in the first quarter of 2023. So some of these things happen, like a ball starts rolling and that
The
creates the
domino
next
effect.
place. Yeah.
I do remember seeing lots of trucks running fiber. So.
Well, it's just IOF. So it would go from the office to office. You might not have seen it. It wouldn't go down each street. It's not like running
just the main lines. Yeah.
last mile fiber, right? It connects the offices basically.
Could you talk more about the arrangement and how that evolved with the Blue Hill Peninsula?
Sure. That's kind of a great story. One of my favorite stories, actually. So I had been engaged with a woman on the Blue Hill Peninsula in Brooksville who had been sort of a loud advocate for better broadband service in that entire area. And to be honest, at first we had a pretty rocky relationship because she wasn't very happy with our DSL on the peninsula. But we continue to worked with them on trying to find solutions to their broadband. We won some RDOF in the area, which was a federal program. We bid on it in her area, started to win some RDOF, and then
Could you explain what RDOF is?
oh, sorry. Yes, please stop me for all of these. I do this all the time. Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. It's the FCC's program that identified census blocks that were unserved and put them out for auction in a competitive auction, and Consolidated won some of those census blocks. So there was a number of things going on there. And then they put out an RFP for a portion of the peninsula, and we responded to that RFP. And in the meantime, the NTIA put out this big grant, and the state of Maine decided they wanted to be a big participant, and they knew to get the scale and frankly the money they needed to match those grants, they were going to need a big player like Consolidated. And so they reached out to us and asked us if we had projects we were working on. At the time, we were working heavily with our friends in Rangeley. And I said, well, the Blue Hill one's really interesting too, because it's a really large area that's been unserved for a while. And so the rest, as they say, is history. It was like the right timing. We just happened to be working with them, and the call came in, and it all made sense.
Is that going to be 100% coverage?
100% coverage, yep, to all of
And
those
when's that
towns.
going to be completed?
That's the question of the hour. So
Yeah.
it was supposed to be completed by the end of the year. We have still yet to receive federal permitting on it. We have to lay a submarine cable. That's a part of the issue. There's also some endangered bats in the area, and the federal process for permitting on that
Wow.
stuff is a headache. We keep being told the next few weeks. So as soon as we get the green light, we will plaster it with trucks, and we think we can turn it up in 3 months.
So will that be cable to, for example, down every public road? And then how does that work with hookups to individual residences? I
Great
mean, is there a distance limit, for example, for a driveway or?
Great questions, all great questions. So for Consolidated, to the extent that we partner in a build, we build fiber to every premise that has infrastructure that carries either telephone or electricity. So that's how we like you to think about it. To the extent you have service today, you need infrastructure to get it there, poles or conduit, and then you need space on those. For us, with respect to poles, we are the telephone provider. We lash over our current copper. So if there's telephone service there, you can guarantee we have space. We lash over that. To the extent it's served underground via conduit, there needs to be space in the conduit for us. If it's a large development, we will often lay the conduit all by ourselves. If it's just private to a single resident, the resident will be responsible for that conduit. We do not charge for drops. So that's the customer piece from the
Yeah.
point pole to the customer house or in. We don't charge for any of that material as far as the physical fiber drop. We don't charge for the optical network terminal that goes in the house. The only thing we charge for is the infrastructure. So to the extent you need a pole placed to get that to you, or you need a conduit placed to get that to you, that'll be the customer's responsibility. With respect to conduit, we do the first 150 feet on our dime. After that, the customer is responsible. We have a product currently that we offer, and we always say it's available until it isn't anymore. But we have sort of microdocked with a drop already in it. And beyond the first 150 feet, we charge $2 a foot for that. So totally reasonable price. We sort of micro trench that in, as I understand it, and it's a good solution for end users. So for the most part, we do it all, or it's a relatively inexpensive endeavor for the end user customer to get all the pieces.
And what speeds will will they be
Oh.
receiving?
Okay, great. So I'm gonna give you guys a basic presentation. I had no idea how much
It's behind the red
you knew or didn't know. So let me show you a couple slides.
We had just,
God's
so you know,
asking the
we
good
had
questions.
Simon Thorne meet with us over the summer.
Okay, that's
We
what I
had some
thought.
Basic information, and from that point, we thought, working with Consolidated could be a good option for this town, so.
Right. That's our old one. I just want to make sure I get one with all the new. Right. Can I share, Brian? Do I need anything special?
You should be able to share.
Oh, wonderful. Ignore the fact that this says the Maine Broadband Coalition. So this is a little bit about us. I won't bore you with any of this, but obviously, we're a larger company. We have over 46,000 miles of fiber and we have 3,400 employees. The thing I like to tell my friends in Maine, since I'm from Maine, is most of our employees are in Maine. It is our largest market. And we are absolutely committed to the state of Maine. Fidium is our branding. I'm sure you're hearing that if you're getting our emails. We don't shy away from the fact that this is consolidated, but we thought it was really important to distinguish our fiber product from our current DSL product. People need to know it's something new and different and delivering a different experience. These are some of our promises, some of our brand promises. Most important thing for you to know with respect to this is that we get this like this. So the most important thing for you to know with respect to this is that we track annually our net promoter score. And we are currently at least twice the industry average, which is our goal. Our company goal is to stay at twice the industry average for net promoter score. And that is touch points with all of our customers, pre-install, install, post-install, post having the service for a month, just asking how it's going. Would you recommend this to a friend? So it's measured at all the points to make sure that we're meeting all of our brand promises. And this is what we look like. And then importantly, to your point, this is our pricing. This is what we're most proud of. We offer up to 2 gigs symmetrical. 2 gigs.
We're not seeing that
Yeah.
slide. We're seeing the main front slide currently.
Are you? Have you been seeing that the whole time?
It
No.
changed at a point and then, but it went back. Yep, there we go. Yep.
Do you see it? Does it say the New Hampshire model? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes. Yep,
Okay, sorry.
Yep.
There we go. And now are you seeing pricing?
correct.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
So yeah, so here's our pricing. This is what we're most proud of. We offer service up to 2 gigs. 2 gigs is pretty extreme. That is for your, architect, photographer, somebody who is gaming a lot. That is not what most people need. And our 2 gig price, we always like to say, is our only one that comes with an installation fee. The end user equipment that's necessary to enable 2 gigs is very expensive. And so that is the only one. But with respect to our other ones at 50, 250 and a gig, we have, there is no installation fee. As I told you, beyond having to put in physical infrastructure like poles or conduits, there is no charge. We lock in your rate for the first year at a lower rate, and then we're try to be very clear and upfront what the price goes into in the second year so that signing up. There is no contractual commitment with that. So even though we offer a lower price, it's not like you have to stay for the first year. We just want to get you in. We know you'll love it. And we want to be totally upfront about what you'll see after the first year.
And let's see, what was the question? It's symmetrical.
Yeah, completely symmetrical on
And-
all the speeds.
And what do you use for the Wi-Fi equipment? I thought I heard something about there were these little Spark adapters. I forget the name of the brand you're using, but I think it's something I've seen in the past about.
Yes, and I don't know, sitting right here, I would have to double check on that.
Right.
Um,
Kind of like a mesh home network.
Yes, it is a mesh home network. We provide up to 2 Wi-Fi extenders, full professional installation. All of our techs come in. They ask you about where you use your internet most. They take their testing equipment, they walk to those places, make sure you're getting a signal there, put in any additional Wi-Fi extenders. And then we have, one of our favorite parts is a whole home plume app. And so
Boom,
you're,
that's the word.
is
I
that
was-
the one you're looking for? Yeah.
Boom, yeah, they've been around for quite a while. So.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's amazing technology. You can shut off your kids' internet from home if you don't like what's going on, or your fridge if it's too smart and taking up too much bandwidth. But funny enough, yeah, super cool. You can run a speed test from that at any time. So sitting in your office, even though you're not at your home, you can run a speed test to see what you're getting. A lot of towns ask us about, do you guarantee speed? To which I always laugh and say, no one can guarantee speed. But you know, when we're talking a gig, because this is a GPON network, is scalable ultimately to 10 gigs because it is fully fiber. You have your own connection, you're not sharing throughout the neighborhood. The speeds are within percentage points. So, you know, you might not get a gig, but you're getting 999. So I do always laugh when somebody says that. I'm like, well, what does guarantee mean? That it's always well over a gig? No, but it is consistently delivering the speed. It is, people are so used to a cable and DSL world, they're really paranoid about speeds, and fiber delivers.
Yeah, only time you probably would have an issue is if you have a Bitcoin miner next door.
That could happen. That could happen.
Well, for anybody that wants those speeds, I do have a listing in Brooksville for $3 million if you want.
Yeah, all right. I'll sign me right up. Cool. Well, good.
Yeah, how do we get that?
Next slide.
So tell me a little bit about Mount Desert. Are you almost completely served by cable? Are you only a percentage served by cable?
And
Tell me
Brian,
about
you
the
have some numbers
experience.
on that, right? I think Brian has the most recent numbers on that. Yeah.
Excellent.
So you're gonna do left, make a right into that plaza.
Brian, I think it was
Sorry,
like
I was muted.
90% or something, I think.
Yeah, Sarah, it's 95% plus covered by cable.
Right.
So, you know, in Bar Harbor, while you haven't defined exactly where you're building yet, that's all on Consolidated's dime. And the density in Bar Harbor is similar to the majority of the density in Mount Desert.
Mhm.
So I think the real question is, how can Mount Desert entice or partner or what have you with Consolidated to extend that capability into Mount Desert? What does it take?
Yeah. There's no short answer for that. So in large part, you know, one, having an engaged and active broadband committee that wants to work with us is like sort of check number one. That to us translates to a little bit of take rate factor. Number two is, you know, obviously if there is a path for grant funding or other funding to offset some of that expense, that very quickly skyrockets it up the list. Those are the two main ways that we partner with communities. It's also possible, but the problem is this is a little bit of a, you know, wait and see, and then if it's not the right answer, it's a little too late. But we will certainly look at the entire area when we're planning for the Bar Harbor, and to the extent, you know, it makes sense and it fits in our capital plan and we don't have other things that are fighting with that in a capital plan, you know, there's a good chance it could get in.
Right, because the town, there is some overlap as far as areas and
Right.
things like that.
Right, because like people frequently say to me, you know, we want to partner with you and are you gonna do it? But we don't want to pay for something you were gonna do anyway. And
Right.
and I always am like, well, you know, something isn't sold until it's sold, and then it's always competing. And if something else is competing with it, you know, it's just the reality of how towns get prioritized. Is there you know, if the density is similar, does it end up having some synergies and get built that way? Sure. That absolutely could happen, but it's a bit of taking a chance.
Right.
Sarah, we should let you know also that we have been in conversation with another abutting town, Fremont, and a couple of the committee members from Fremont are on this call as well.
Oh, I just see Elaine. Hello, Elaine.
We just figured that numbers are important and
Right.
two towns coming together would be much more attractive.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And is Fremont similarly situated in that it's largely served by cable?
Correct. I don't think they have great DSL, if any, coverage in Bass Harbor and Tremont, very little, if anything, through DSL. Most of it is cable, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, and in the 90% range?
Well, we're just finishing up a survey right now and we won't know the answer to that for another week or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, those are other ways too, to the extent that there's some areas that make sense to get a grant to supplement such that you're bringing down your cost per passing, you know, you're granting basically a portion of it, you're bringing down your cost per passing, and they're looking pretty similar.
Yeah,
Those
in an
make a lot of sense.
ideal world, the whole island would be, you know, fiberized, so to speak.
Right, right. Maybe not into Acadia, but you know, otherwise.
Well, they'll probably want it at the campgrounds. I'm
Oh,
sure.
I know, but after my federal experience, I will not federally permit anything again, I don't think.
Yeah.
It gets messy. They might have some bats you have to deal with.
I can't imagine a national park. It must be a little intense.
Goodness.
Any
Yeah.
other questions for Sarah?
So I guess I would like to make a comment that
Yeah.
what we've got, Spectrum, what they're doing is they're fiber optic to the pole and copper to the premises. So if it can be fiber optic to the premises, that's kind of a game changer,
Right.
I think.
They
Absolutely.
probably have similar plans, but who knows when they'll get around to it. I'm sure it's all cost driven as well, like most companies. But
Yeah, I don't know about, Brian, you may know better than me, but I don't believe Spectrum has any large scale fiber to the prem plans.
no.
They
I think they
typically-
upgrade their cable, right?
Yeah, they're building fiber to the premise in new areas
Right.
that are of significant size, but not filling in gaps in existing areas where they have coax.
Right.
They do offer, like, if you're a business or a large residence and want to pay for a fiber connection, they'll certainly do that for you, but it's a one-on-one, one-by-one kind of thing, I think.
Mhm.
At tremendous expense.
Yes, that's for sure. Yeah, I think a 10 gig connection, they tried to sell the school a 10 gig connection. Spectrum was as a backup, and I think they were looking at around, I think it was $4,000 a month, something like that, for a
Mhm.
connection like that. Yeah.
I have a question that may be completely impossible or just stupid, but if the town were to invest in its own fiber optic network that the town owned, but then it was dark fiber, at least to anybody else, would Consolidated use those to provide services?
No,
They like their own stuff.
yeah, yeah, well, and we haven't seen a lot of that here in Maine. We've seen enough of it that it makes people think it's a thing. But we I'm not aware of one anywhere that has attracted more than one provider on that network. And Consolidated has not found one that has made sense. Our biggest problem with that is, we build out our network and our equipment, and it's one of the reasons while we can't make you take our modem and router, we highly encourage it. It allows us to monitor, and not in the scary way that we want to know what websites you're going to. We don't sell or collect anyone's personal information, but so that we can monitor what's going on with the connection, we can monitor the equipment, we can tell when there's a fiber outage or when something's going wrong with the equipment. And you lose all of that for a large part if you're providing service over somebody else's dark fiber network. We also worry about the specs in which it's built and if they're consistent with ours. If it's not done well and we join it, it still impacts our brand, because if people are complaining about a service we're providing, they don't distinguish, oh, that was the town-owned service that Consolidated agreed to get on. So we haven't really been comfortable. We haven't found a place where we're comfortable with that. We always say we'll never say no outright, but we have not joined one yet.
Yeah, I think any plans along that line that the town would have would be better, as if the funds that would have been applied to that could be applied towards a cooperative venture maybe, or something,
Absolutely. So I always say they're more expensive for end users. I have friends that participate in that model that might disagree with me, but I've never seen one that can charge the prices we charge. They always say, well, we don't have a profit motive and there's no return. You also don't have scale. You don't have, workforce. You don't have all those things. So we're obviously large believers in the private industry does this for a living. Trust them to do it, to continue to do it.
Right. The only places like Islesboro or some of those other Vinyl Haven places that have done that and have offered like a $50 plan.
Yeah. Well, they collect.
Because their infrastructure has been paid for by.
Islesboro collects it as sort of a tax assessment, and that's smart in some ways, because then they don't have to worry about take rate or all the pieces that private providers do. Everyone pays for it regardless of use.
Right.
But islands are different. Islands run hospitals. Islands run all sorts of things that most towns probably wouldn't run for themselves, because islands do it by necessity. So I am never against that model for an island. I think they're different animals for a large part, and frankly, as a private provider, they're very difficult to serve for us. So we understand their desire to do it on their own.
Right.
Do you have different price points for low income residents? And second part is, if we had a partnership and the town was able to bring in some capital and or unlock some funding, do you have flexibility on price points for packages to our residents?
So we offer the ACP discount. So we have a $30 discount on all of our pricing tiers through the ACP. And I believe that is 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. We also will offer a 50/10 service for free for ACP qualifying customers. That's required as part of the Connect Maine grant funding. And we're participating in that. So they will have the ability to get a free service at that tier. We are working on a partnership with Bangor, which is an area we largely built on our own, to work on some guarantees to keep our prices where they are. That's one of the ways we're trying to be creative on that. But it's difficult for us to do pricing different than we do throughout our territory. That makes marketing, operations, everything difficult. So we've never really engaged in that. And, we, aside from those low income programs, we don't have anything else that's sort of more robust than that for low income. But it does, it brings down our prices into a range that's probably significantly more affordable.
Thank you. That makes sense. I think, equitable access is one of the goals of the committee, and
Right.
just trying to
Absolutely.
figure out how we can make sure that not only can we hit every single residence with service, but make it affordable for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important. I think it'll continue to be a topic of conversation for all of the world. Let me share. Can I still share? Looks like I can. Look at that. I'm gonna try. So we did high level vet the area of Mount Desert. This is what our infrastructure build would look like. Obviously starts out of the Bar Harbor CO. Obviously we'll be building portions of Bar Harbor, so it will not look like this, but this is, if we were to just build Mount Desert, we would build sort of F1 fiber to here, and these would be our FDHs that we would build out. The colors don't mean anything different. I always get asked that question, so I'll just tell you that up front. It just denotes for us sort of where we would build out of each one of those FDHs. And so when I was talking earlier about, you know, how we would make decisions, is we would look at these each on an individual basis and make sure that they all produced a return. And to the extent some of them, you know, really didn't make sense, didn't have a lot of households, those are the kind of things that would kind of get cut out of the capital plan.
Right. And it's interesting too, that a lot of the thought of Howell Quarry and around there is actually served from the office in Southwest Harbor because of their
Yes.
phone exchange. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say you guys did this plan and you determined that a couple of these, I don't know what FDH means, but a couple of these FDHs weren't worth investing in.
Yeah.
Is that something that the town, either through our own taxes or funding, could help offset so that we can get to that 100% coverage?
Yeah, absolutely. Those were the best sort of partnerships we've had with the town of Surrey, for instance. Right now, we had a couple of FTHs they wanted served that were unserved, and we worked with them actually through our Ellsworth build and kind of costed those out and said sort of this is where our capital would end, and they supplemented the portion from there to the end of it. That also helped me, you know, when the company is making decisions to say, you know, we should go a little bit further. We could end this Ellsworth build in Ellsworth. If we go into Surrey, they're willing to do this, and this, you know, brings basically the same return as we were receiving in Ellsworth. And like I said, our company gets excited about these. They'll pay a little more for these than they would just a straight R build, because we do show that when communities are engaged and are engaging with us, we do show a higher take rate at the end of the day. So we do, in our modeling, we put a little more, we'll put basically a higher take rate next to community partnership areas. And we've found that to be true.
Yeah, I think you'd find too a pretty decent take rate, because there are quite a few people that they have Spectrum, they enjoy it, they use it, but boy, it would be nice to have an alternative.
Yeah. Well, I just got a really nice note from Peggy Schaefer, who actually was the head of the Connect Maine Authority. I'm not sure if you all know her, but sent a really nice note we had built out in Vassalboro. And she said the community gossip page in Vassalboro is saying how happy everyone is with Fidium and how happy they are that they're no longer with Spectrum. So we think we do pretty well against them. We do always caution, you know, inertia is a real thing, and if it works well enough, sometimes people don't change.
Yeah.
But people who care, we do find that we do well. And our high level, just to give you some sense, I think it's always helpful for a community to have a sense. So our high level estimate of this is in the $4.6 million range. Actually not that bad. I see a lot of big numbers on a lot of days. So that to me was
the best case scenario would be years down the road, right?
the best case scenario would be 2024.
2020.
Yeah, our plan is set and really not moving for 2023. The thing is, we have to get stuff fully engineered and ready. We have to start 6 months in advance and then plan for 3 months of build. So, you know, that's we could squeeze a small project into the fourth quarter at this point. That's pretty much the only play we have.
And the Blue Hill Peninsula plan, I don't know how it compares in coverage, you know, to our area, but what is the total cost of that? And how did that get paid for? Or
So
how
the-
is it getting paid for?
Yeah, the Blue Hill Peninsula, I want to say was in the $11 million range.
Okay,
Don't quote me on that. It
Yeah.
might have been like 13 actually. But the federal government paid for most of that. We had put in a match of about 13%, I think. We used our estimated costs for drops and ONTs for the end user equipment, basically. As our match for that project. So the federal government paid for most of it, which is why we're stuck waiting on the federal government, because
Yeah.
they don't give them away money without strings.
now, did they throw a dart and determine, the federal government to determine the Blue Hill Peninsula is what they wanted?
No, funny enough. No, the Connect Maine Authority approached us. I mean, Peggy Schaefer should be commended on her leadership on that grant, and just said, we want to put in a really big grant. And we think if we put in like a $24 million grant and we do some, find some really compelling places, we'll win. And
Yeah, they were.
frankly, Senator Collins and Angus King, let's not discount how much work they did on that side,
Mhm.
but they
Yeah.
approached us and we happened to be working with the Blue Hill Peninsula. They happened to have picked us. It was a good project area. Had a lot of unserved places,
Yeah.
tells a good story. And then on the other side of the state, we were working with Rangeley. And so those were both, Rangeley was almost completely unserved. Just two really good stories that put together a compelling grant. And then there were two other providers that did really small projects, Idaho, Jefferson, Washington. So, the whole thing got put together a lot by chance, by partnership. They happened to be working with us at the time. They turned into really good places. And then the luckiest community in Maine was Farmington. That maybe largely was a dart. They were an area, we were looking for areas that the county had to meet some cost qualifications. They basically had to be low income sort of. And but we needed some density to really bring up the numbers in the project, and Farmington fit that really well. And had a cable company that isn't Spectrum, so wasn't meeting the federal requirements for speeds. And so they appeared largely unserved too. So the characteristics were right for what the grant was looking for. And Peggy Schaefer spent a lot of time making sure she only included areas in the grants that fit those cost characteristics so that the state got it.
Awesome. Other questions for Sarah?
No, that provides some light to look forward to down the road.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, like I said, to the extent, I mean, I don't know if you have ARPA funds or other things, we can talk about a way that we can put this together and see if there's a way to get this at the top of my company's 2024 plan. We will all find out, I think, in about 2 months, what happens on the first rounds of grants at the Maine Connectivity Authority. That'll be telling how much they're granting to areas with cable. Their maps currently show everything's eligible because you have to be served at 100 over 100, but then they do some weighting for 25 over 3, but then they wouldn't tell us what those locations were. So we're all kind of waiting to see.
Right. A lot
What
of
that
movement.
looks like. Brian, did you ever crack the code on what was unserved at 25.3?
I did not.
Okay.
I
I
gave
didn't,
up.
I didn't either, so
Well, thank you, Sarah.
you're
for your
very
time.
welcome.
Appreciate it. And
No problem.
I mean, with Brian's work with the town of Tremont, that might be a nice cooperative effort.
Absolutely, absolutely. Serving out of our Southwest Harbor. I do think Simon is also talking to Southwest Harbor.
Yep.
Brian, do you represent them? Do you know?
I do not.
Okay. I believe he is. I think they just reached out directly, maybe.
Yeah.
So, all of these may come together as a really good project. Certainly, as we're building out Bar Harbor, this makes sense. And, but just being perfectly clear that the planning for that type of thing will be June to September.
all right. Well, thank you, Sarah.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Any other questions, let me know.
Okay, we will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love to hear from Brian, just impressions.
Well, I was a little disappointed that she wasn't more prepared. I thought they were gonna come to the table and say, here's how much we need.
Right,
And while it looks like they've done some research, they came up with what their overall cost was going to be at 4.6 million, which coincidentally matches what was in the study. I think that is a realistic number. I was disappointed that she didn't know what the level of coverage already was. We supplied that report back in July. But you know, they're juggling a lot. They got
Right.
everyone's knocking on their door.
Yeah.
And so I think what I think we need to go back to her, or maybe more formally, and ask specifically what's it going to take to, how much of a subsidy is going to be required, whether that subsidy comes from the state, the feds, the local, what is the number that you have to solve for in order for them to completely build out. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get further up on their radar, obviously.
and would it be fair to say that when these new rounds of funding come out, are we going to be a fairly low priority?
Hard to say.
Well,
Hey, boy.
I wish I could definitively answer that. With
Yeah.
the grant round that closed a few weeks ago, those areas that do not have cable TV infrastructure are reportedly going to be scored higher than areas that do. But the Maine Connectivity Authority didn't share that level of detail with us so that we could look to see, what areas. That grant round, they have 70 million for it, and they received applications for over 100 million. So it was oversubscribed. After that money's gone, then the next program is called BEAD, BEAD, coming out of the federal government, and that's more specifically targeted areas that do not have cable TV infrastructure, although the rules still aren't finalized. So I don't know. And that's why I say we need to figure out what is the number that needs to be solved for. And then start searching, as these grant programs become available, does this area qualify? How well will it compete? It could be that Consolidated could come back and say, you know what? We'll do this at the same time as Bar Harbor. We just need another 500,000. And a $500,000 ask is a lot different than a $2 million ask. So we really need to know what the number is.
Yeah.
Right.
And by number, need to know what number is. How many subscribers there would be, how many houses, what number are we looking for?
Well, the number would be to give 100% coverage, right?
Yes,
What it would cost to do that.
So what would be the build out cost to get 100% coverage? I mean, and for them, that's basically running fiber everywhere, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
and she told you it's 4.6 million.
Yeah.
So of that 4.6 million, how much are they willing to invest and how much of a subsidy are they looking for?
Right.
And she didn't have that answer.
No.
Would it be on us to chase down the grant opportunities, or when we have a partnership with a telecom, do they do that side of it?
Yeah, they would do that. They would handle the whole application process. And then there's a lot of compliance requirements during the build out and after the build out that you want them to be responsible for complying with.
Right. Yeah,
So
I'm
is
sure.
that something we simply, is that one, a next step is ask her what that breakdown would be?
Well, I'm gonna have a conversation with her, hopefully tomorrow, and
Okay,
to drive home and find out exactly what do you need to do to get to that number.
Yeah.
And then let's go from there. So I'll get
Okay.
back to you, but I
okay,
was hoping that she would have come to the table today
with
with
that,
that
yeah.
information.
yeah, well,
And Elaine, do you have a sense of the town of Tremont and the level of interest in doing exactly that, full universal coverage?
Well, our committee was waiting to see what our stand was right now in the town, and that's why we're waiting for this report. We didn't feel like we knew enough to be able to make a decision. I mean, we were thinking that, yeah, we wanted to go like the same way, have 100% coverage to all of our community members, but again, you know, we have some probably more rural areas than you do.
Right.
With you know, longer distances in. And I'm assuming that that would mean more dollars to get it up and running.
But it could also be more interesting because there is less available.
Yeah,
You know,
there might be more grant opportunities too then.
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you know, like I was listening to you guys talking about the grant opportunities and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And like right now, like I haven't got a clue how. It was interesting to hear how you guys would, who would go after the grants, because it's like, how do we do that? I don't know.
Oh, and the word from this, so I went to the last Friday, Michelle and I both went to the Maine Broadband Summit down in Thomas College. And the biggest takeaway there was the money is available now, go for it. It's not going to be available forever. After this next round of federal funding, it's probably going to dry up. They're not going to do this again. So if we want to do something, we need to start acting now.
So our plan is to get together the first week of January. I'm saying the first week of January. I didn't quite post that, but that's sort of the plan right after the holidays, to get the statement of the report. And that way, I thought we could catch up with you guys to let you know where we stand, so that we could do more of a joint effort.
Right. Might be more appealing for them for sure. Yeah.
Well, at least to see what's available, you know, I mean, if it makes us more grantable, if we're together, then that would be great, you know.
It's encouraging that Southwest Harbor is also reaching out to them as well.
Yeah.
And,
And
you
they
know,
were reaching out to Fidium. They weren't necessarily reaching out. They weren't necessarily doing the same thing that we all are doing, are they?
no, but just that they were talking to Consolidated at all.
As an option, yeah. Yep.
Because when we first did our outreach via the League of Towns, they did not say, bye, Pete. Thank you. They did not express interest in engaging at all. So they've sort of been very quiet. Trenton, you know, spoke up some. And so maybe it's time to go back to both Southwest Harbor and Trenton and say, and Bar Harbor, and say, let's do this together. You know, is that a thing, Derlin, do you think?
It's possible, Kathy. It's so confusing with there's all kinds, you know, we've got so many players running around. We've got so many funding sources, with each having a different set of, if not regulations, of preferences. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
We're in the process of doing a study for Bar Harbor as well to identify, just like we are for Tremont and we did for Mount Desert, all those unserved areas. So all of that will come together. Tremont study should be done by the end of the month, and then Bar Harbor will be a couple of weeks beyond that. In Bar Harbor, they said that they are going to build, they just haven't told anybody yet. to what extent they're gonna build.
I know
So
they're
they're,
moving ahead with the project for the town offices and town locations and the connection to the Bar Harbor Police Department to Mount Desert.
Right.
I think that's gonna happen relatively soon, so, yeah.
Does Bar Harbor have a committee?
no, well, they have a science and technology committee, I think, or I can't remember what
They
they
had
call
one
it.
and then it kind of fell apart and there's kind of been some various political movements one way and the other in Bar Harbor. But I think the town basically decided to go. They solicited, quotes from many providers and but very few takers. They actually had to redo it and then consolidate it. I saw it as an opportunity to work with them, I think, to make some progress. So that kind of fell together in the past 6 months or so, I guess. And the school's going to benefit from that as well as having a direct town-owned fiber between the high school and Emerson School, so. Which should give us some more reliability for that core piece of fiber.
It just seems as though we should bring in as many of the towns, the contiguous properties as possible, even starting with Trenton, and do every town on the island. you
Right.
know?
Well, I think if what Wendell is saying is true, where Bar Harbor was having difficulties getting anybody interested for several months.
Yep.
That just speaks to where we would be as individual players.
Right. I mean, at some point, the schools could be a driving force too. I mean, we're all kind of still operating with the grace of Spectrum using their free dark fiber connections that there's really no agreement in place with any of the towns other than just that's the way it's always been, and please don't, bring it up and change it. But if Bar Harbor's moving ahead with this plan to at least get town-owned infrastructure between their facilities, it might be interesting at some point to bring that up.
Yeah, and just to clarify,
Yeah.
what they're doing with Consolidated to hook up the town facilities
Right.
will still be owned by Consolidated. It's a
Right.
long lease that Bar Harbor
Right.
is into.
Right, pretty favorable terms, but that might be something if all the schools and towns agreed to have a core set of fiber to connect the schools together and the town offices together, it might make a package more appealing to them. I don't know if the towns could partially fund that, at least. I don't know. Hard to know. It's something to think about maybe.
Can I ask a clarifying question, This is Michelle? Did I didn't quite understand where Southwest Harbor is. Are they willing to? It just seems to me, Mount Desert. It just seems to me that we would be more attractive to large federal and state funding if we join together, because we have different demographics, we have different income levels. Mount Desert, has, I think, the highest income level on the island. I would imagine that Tremont probably has the lowest. Has anyone reached out to them? I heard you.
So quite some time ago, over a year ago, probably, we went to the League of Towns. So it was all the towns on the island, plus off the island, offshore islands, I think the county as well, and said that we have, this town of Mount Desert committee is looking at this. We think it would be better if we would all join together. Is there any other town that's interested in working with us? And Tremont responded favorably and Trenton did, but we've really but then they kind of went quiet for a long time. The other towns did not. But what we heard today was that Southwest Harbor independently has reached out to Consolidated to start talking to them about different options. So that's all we know so far.
Right.
It seems to me not only would we potentially be have a better outcome for funding, but it's also such a duplication of effort and resources.
Absolutely.
And we'd have a stronger voice. We'd be more attractive to funders, and
Makes
we
perfect
could.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But, and there has been a change in Southwest Harbor. I mean, when we first approached, they had a different town manager. They had different people on their board of selectmen. They've had a lot of turnover that might have a different level of interest now in talking to us.
Yeah, and my takeaway from the summit was, you know, if we don't address this now, we're going to be needing to address it 10 years from now.
Yes.
You know, we should be forward thinking. This is necessary. This isn't a convenience. You know, this is necessary. I think COVID taught us that for economic development, we're trying to attract people to the state of Maine and people having jobs. And I mean, it checks all the boxes. I just hate to see all of this duplication of efforts when we should really be collaborating. And I don't know if we can formally go back to Southwest or some other towns and what that process would look like, or if we'd want to even entertain that.
Well,
So I'm wondering, and this might be too simplistic, but you know, the Blue Hill Peninsula is made up of more than one town. And I don't think they had every broadband committee in every town that organized all this. I mean,
No.
why couldn't we just go through the League of Towns and get League of Towns sign off on asking Spectrum and Consolidated to work up a number to provide fiber optic to every home on Mount Desert Island and Trenton? Why couldn't we do that? And then figure it out from there. You know, once we had a price, figure out how we're going to do it. Maybe we use, you know, cost sharing, like the high school funding formula or whatever. I mean, just something to try to figure out how we're going to pay for all of that. But
yeah,
why couldn't we do that?
Well, I don't know. What do you think, Derlin? You've got the most experience with the League of Towns, so.
There was no reason you couldn't make that ask.
I mean, it doesn't cost anything anyone. It costs any money at this point. It's just, what is the big ticket? You know, let's do that way we can get everyone. I think a lot of people will jump on the bandwagon. It's just that some towns have broadband committees, others don't. And it's just a matter of getting people dedicated. So let's cut to the chase and just have, you know, get permission from the League of Towns to say to Spectrum and Consolidated, give us a number, give us a proposal,
Right.
fiber to every home in business.
Then you could have something to move at the town meetings and stuff to see if people are in favor of kind of proceeding after you have some numbers and costs.
Yeah, and I'd also recommend if we took that step, is, you know, part of the MCA grant and these partners is allowing, you know, for example, for Mount Desert Island, it's the Island Institute that is the MCA community partner serving Mount Desert Island. And they're looking at MCA and Island Institute, you know, these resources to help towns like ours to bring in their people to help us with community engagement. So they have the funding for it, so they could hire the staff for it to support us. So if we had the big picture number and then we wanted to move forward, we'd have to get the community involved. And I think we could use those resources available to help us with those next steps.
so Michelle or Elaine, do you guys have any good connections to have individual conversations with anybody in Southwest Harbor that, you know, get them started thinking about this so that we can, when we do bring it to the League of Towns again, that they might be more receptive?
That's a good question.
I don't personally know anybody but Wendell who lives in Southwest.
Yeah, I could bring it up with the town manager. I know her pretty well. Like, next time I pay another tax bill, I can go.
How's your broadband?
Well, you know, the reality is that no matter what, every town that we get involved has to have a broadband committee, otherwise they don't qualify for getting some of those grants.
Right.
So, you know, that's one thing, but I think that us all getting together like this and like this particular meeting is more worthwhile for us to work forward than working in our individual, I mean, we have to work in our individual committees too, but I think a bigger piece of that would be like working as a whole with all of the towns connected.
I do too.
Brian,
Jim Villette, who's one of the new selectmen in Southwest Harbor, relatively new, and I can reach out to him and just get his take on where does he think things might go. And
Sure, yeah.
hey, Brian,
Yes,
are you that familiar with the whole Blue Hill Peninsula program?
I am.
Did each town have a well-organized broadband committee that got this moving and in a concerted effort?
Each town at various points in time had a broadband committee. And the folks in Blue Hill itself were sort of the leaders, if you will, over the long term. But that was like a 5-year effort. As Sarah was describing, they went out to an RFP, and it was sort of a lunar event as far as the NTIA making this grant program available. It fit the mold for what they were looking for, and Connect Maine sort of drove that into the NTIA. So
It was easy, low hanging fruit for them.
yeah, it's hard to make a comparison given all that went on. And the NTIA paid 90% of the cost of that project.
Wow.
Which is much, much more than what anybody would have expected. And Consolidated contributed 10%. So that's a hard one to compare to.
Yeah.
It does make sense to partner with your surrounding communities, but also recognize that that is that much harder.
Right.
Because not all of the communities are going to have the same vision or the same goals. And unfortunately, a lot of times the communities don't work well together. So it is sort of like herding chickens sometimes.
well, it took
So
30 years for FDI to get a high school pulled together, but now there's one committee that has representatives from each of the towns that manages the high school. And I'm wondering, we got in theory, each town weighs in. Could we create a broadband committee for MDI?
Yeah.
Rather than individual towns.
Right, that would be an ideal goal for sure.
But it's still going to be really important that, I think it's a great idea to have an MDI broadband committee. But the individual select boards in each one of the towns also need to be on board.
Correct.
And then there's a lot of community engagement that needs to occur in order to get those positive votes and so forth. So it's not a light lift. It will take a lot of effort. I think with this new program that they're rolling out with the community partners, where Island Institute will be helping you guys, that will help. But nothing beats, making sure that every town manager and every select board member is all on the same page as to what you're going to want to accomplish.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And you need to do it quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
So next steps.
Wendell's going to talk to the town manager of Southwest Harbor. I'll talk to one of the selectmen, maybe even 2 of them.
Okay.
Anybody else have any contacts you want to pursue? Any business relationships? Any realtors in Southwest Harbor that understand how important this is for the town, that want to push it along? Anybody in the school system, Elaine, that,
We're all kind of living off the fat of the land from the dark fiber that we've been given free. But at some point, who knows if that's going to be a forever deal or not. So that
That's at the schools. It's not at kids' individual homes.
Right, right, but I mean, if the schools were to somehow spearhead some of this work too, like what's happening in Bar Harbor, that could also help, I guess. It could be something we could bring up at one of the tech committee meetings and then bring to the A-team at some point for them to think about anyway, but.
See, I can't imagine anyone saying, no, I'm not interested in getting a gigabyte or whatever, fiber optic to all homes. The next question would be, but at what cost?
Correct, yeah.
And that's why it
Yeah.
seems to me that somehow, so once we have some figures, we can start presenting to different communities. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm naive, but do you think there's no buy? I mean, I think there's plenty of buy-in. Everyone would love to see fiber optic to every house, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what the price tag is and what the bite is in their wallet,
And I think that, we did a series of 7 different public meetings, bringing in the Connect Maine Authority, the Island Institute, Maine Broadband Coalition, the National Center for Digital Equity, and then some other public meetings just to tell people what this committee was up to, and we did some surveys. We got very little participation at any of those public meetings, even though it was perfectly available. We tried to advertise it well, but very
it's
little
hard.
from that.
It's hard.
But we went through that process. And
Bless you.
Question.
coffee. I'm gonna mute myself. And it took time to go through all of those things. And you wonder, what did we get out of it? The survey was helpful. We did get feedback on that. We had hundreds of people respond to that. If Tremont would like to see the survey that we did, we can make that available to you. Because we got some, good candid stuff. And we had everybody do a broadband test and they could send that in.
Right.
But, so if there are steps along the way, do each of the towns have to go through those same steps again?
Right.
And the other issue is we're limited with time.
Exactly.
I guess I'll ask the question, Brian, what steps would you suggest?
I would still drive to get from Consolidated. What is the number? Let's get the number. Let's get the number for Mount Desert. Let's get the number for Tremont and for Bar Harbor. And then see where we get. In the meantime, I think it's great to reach out to Southwest Harbor and what was the other community?
Of all the towns, Southwest Harbor is the most compact, so their cost would probably be the least, so.
Yeah, but I think it makes sense to try to pull that together in parallel with doing your individual routes.
Right.
So we got to get the number.
Yep.
That's, I think, Spectrum came to the table with a number.
Yeah.
You get the CCI to come to the table with a number, and then you have something to work with.
Right.
And that's what this whole thing was designed to get to. That's why I'm a little bit disappointed with CCI's response.
Spectrum's number, though, wasn't fiber to every.
No, but at least, they said, here's the number to build out the rest of their infrastructure so that everybody had access to it.
Has access to what they offer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's really what you're asking for.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I did follow up with you. I thought I might have sent something out. I went to the county and said, do you fund through your offer coax projects? And they said yes. So that would be, their proposal would be, as long as they still have money, would be fundable from their behalf. So.
Well, yeah.
So that's always an option if you wanted to just do the build out and close the gaps, and that's something that's still on the table.
Right.
And that can be an independent decision from
Correct.
a
The
fiber
longer
solution.
range plan, yeah.
Oh.
All right, sounds good. I'll try to reach out to Southwest
Okay.
next week.
And Brian's gonna have conversations with Sarah.
Yes,
And so do we want to plan on our regular meeting date in January? Does that give us enough time, which is, do you have a calendar in front of you, Kathy, by any chance?
Yes, the next meeting is Thursday, January 12th at 4 o'clock.
That should give us some time. And Brian, you think you might have some kind of a number from CCI by then? I don't know. Hard to say. Yeah. Hard to say.
I thought they were gonna bring a number today.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And
All right.
it's clear that they've done some work to figure out what that number is. She showed the map.
Right.
They've done, and
Some
they,
high level stuff, yeah,
you know, they came back with an overall project price of 4.6 million.
right.
So the, you know, getting to what portion are they looking for?
Right.
Um,
That's
you
a
know,
challenge, yeah.
That, well, it should be fairly easy for them to produce.
Brian, do you think they came up with that figure because they just took it out of the estimate that you provided?
You
Since
know,
provided that report?
I don't know. You know, our estimates are routinely pretty darn close.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
For a while, so.
there's not a lot of rocket science to this. And I will say in CCI's defense, their model keeps changing as costs increase.
Right,
The
right,
demand for materials and construction crews has driven up the costs, which means then that their investors are, you know, looking for a different return threshold.
right,
And that's always a moving target.
Right,
Any
right.
public company is changing that almost on a quarterly basis.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And so, but we're gonna have to press them. And so I will be, I know Sarah very, very well, and I can have that conversation with her. And I will let her know I'm a little disappointed that they didn't bring that to the table today. So,
Sounds good.
Thank
All
you.
right. I
Any
think-
other
right.
business? My dog is
I'm
telling me
gonna
I have
drop
to
off,
feed her.
folks.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Happy holidays.
You
Take
too.
care.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Michelle.
everyone.
Yeah, good to see you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.